Welcome, everyone, to an afternoon conversation with four extraordinary cellists who have joined us in a great collaboration spearheaded by Professor Larry Lesser from NEC. And my name is Claudia Robaina Winston. I'm the Dean of Artistic Administration at NEC, and I'm in great company with my colleague, Ana Abrantes from the Sphinx Organization. She's the Director of Education there. And allow me to introduce everyone in the room. We have Tahirah Whittington, first of the Senior Division prize winners at Sphinx. We have Tony Rymer. Sorry, Tony, I forgot the year in which you won. And Christine Lamprea and Gabriel Martins, who is our latest Senior Division award winner at the Sphinx Organization. This is a companion piece to a performance you will be listening on February 28th, which includes arrangements of Igor Stravinsky's Pulcinella for cello quartet, as well as George Walker's string quartet, the second movement of his string quartet. But I would like to invite my colleague, Ana Brantes, to take over and lead us through a great conversation.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I appreciate your willingness to share your time and your wisdom and your stories with us. I just joined the Sphinx Organization, but I'm a longtime admirer of the work that has been done for the past 24 years. And just to start, I would like to hear a bit from you about yourself and what you're doing and your path with the cello and music.
Well, thank you for having us here. It's really been wonderful to connect with these three other great artists, even through this virtual space. But yeah, I think we've done, considering the circumstances, we've put together something quite nice, and I hope that all of you listening will enjoy that. Myself, I am finishing the master's degree at NEC right now, studying with Professor Lesser. And before then, I was at the University of Southern California, where I did my undergrads. But yeah, I mean, my degree here at NEC has been a little bit unusual because more than half of it has been during the coronavirus times. So the whole way that I interact with the institution and the school has been a little bit untraditional. However, it's still been a wonderful time, and I'm very grateful for everything they've given me.
I guess I can go next. Yes, it's been a while since my NEC days, but I look on them very fondly. That was, straight out of high school into my undergraduate studies. I had just come from Walnut Hill School, so I was familiar with the campus because I would go every Saturday for the youth orchestra there and chamber music on the campus. So Walnut Hill was a great stepping stone to my undergraduate studies at NEC. And since then, I've done quite a lot since it was 98 that I graduated from NEC. But currently, I am a part of two chamber music ensembles. One is called Decomposed. It's currently a string quartet, and we celebrate the artistry of Black musicians and Black composers. I am also a part of Ritz Chamber Players. I was one of the founding members of Ritz Chamber Players, and that is an ensemble made up of people of the African diaspora. And it's a mix of instrumentalists and vocalists based in Jacksonville, Florida. I am also a theater musician. I'm currently the Dear Evan Hansen Broadway tour cellist. And before that, I was the Hamilton cellist here in Chicago. I'm in Chicago. But yeah, so I've dibbled and dabbled in quite a lot since my NEC days.
I can go next, I suppose. I'm Tony, and I was at NEC for an undergrad and master's. I started in 2007 after having also attended the Walnut Hill School. I actually didn't know that you went there. But yeah, it provided a nice stepping stone to NEC, and I spent 6 years at NEC before moving to Germany, and I did another master's degree here in Berlin at Hans Eisler. And now the last, 9 years, I've been living in Berlin and playing cello here and there and everywhere. Chamber music, orchestra, solo stuff. And yeah, I did Sphinx many times, actually, the competition. And I ended up doing the senior division in, I think, 2009. And since then have done lots of things, tours of the virtuosi and various events with Sphinx. So between Sphinx and NEC, I spent a lot of hours practicing for the things that I had to do there, and also got a lot of performance opportunities through both of them.
Tony and I were at NEC at the same time. We both graduated with our master's degrees in 2013, but I was only there for my master's degree while Tony was there for his undergrad. It was such a nice, that was one of the best decisions to go to NEC. I did my undergraduate studies in New York at the Juilliard School, which was great. But then moving to Boston, even though it was such a, Boston is still like a thriving city, it was just a hair calmer. And I think Boston itself is such an academic city. I think there are something like 52 institutions of upper, post high school learning, post-secondary learning. So there's a sense of freedom in education and experimentation in Boston that I think NEC really embraced also. And so some of my most creative practicing was happening there, and such a supportive faculty and great chamber musicians and players around me, so I could really thrive as an artist. I won the Sphinx competition my last year there, and then I graduated. I performed as a soloist with the Sphinx Virtuosi. I play a lot as a chamber musician with different groups. I through the Sphinx competition and also the Carlos Prieto competition, which I did a couple of years later, I met Jesus Castrobalbi, who is a cello professor in Texas, and he gave me, I applied for the position, and he happened to be, we had already met through the competitions, but I substituted for him as a cello professor in Texas, and that gave me kind of my first taste of my love for teaching. So now I'm on the faculty at the Longy School of Music, and I also substitute teach at Juilliard, and continue performing, if COVID wasn't happening right now. But yeah, I do kind of a wide mix of solo, chamber music, and teaching.
Nice. And Christine, you're touching a little bit on the important things that you experienced at NEC. So I would like to ask all of you, since you're all students and alums of NEC and also first prize winners of the Sphinx competition, what is one thing that you feel is crucial or critical, both at NEC when you study there or as a Sphinx artist?
I think for NEC, I was there as just a young person. I did have my taste of living alone before, or living away from home, being at Walnut Hill for my last 2 years of high school. So I did get a taste of being on my own before having to, be an undergraduate student at NEC. But I think actually this time right now has solidified the meaning of the camaraderie that I gained at NEC with the other graduate students being in the dorm. I don't think those dorms are even there anymore. They become practice rooms, I believe. So that's how long ago I was a student there. but to be able to still have those friends who supported me then support me now, those are people that I met at NEC. And I'm so grateful for that, because those are strong bonds that I rely on as my support, as my true friends, and people who really understood who I was then and who understand who I am now. I'm very, very grateful for the tutelage that I was able to experience with Professor Lesser. He was president at the time. And so we had our lessons in his presidential office kind of thing. So, it was a whole kind of experience, going to the president's office and having lessons. And I will never forget those experiences. Tony is tickled. But yeah, that was definitely a different time. Absolutely. But as far as the Sphinx.
Can I just ask, did you have to take your shoes off to go into the president?
You know what? I can't remember that, but it's a possibility. It's definitely a possibility.
I didn't know if that.
You know what, Tony? I would not put it past. That's just something that didn't stick in my memory, but I wouldn't put it past.
Gabriel, do you have to take your shoes off for your virtual lessons?
Oh, Tony's the comedian.
Or did you have to when you had lessons in his studio?
In his studio, yes, of course. So far in
then I must have had to take my shoes off there. Yeah. But as far as the Sphinx experience, thinking back on that, we always want to think back and regale and the celebratory nature of that competition, especially the very start of it. And that's another place where I met longtime friends, people that I feel I can rely on. But more importantly, it was a time where I learned how to be self-reliant. That was, right before I got on stage. It was a difficult time for me. I was really, really ill during that week. I was really, really ill to the point where in the semifinals, I was coughing while I was playing, and even the conductor was, right before the finals on stage performance, she was like, you know what? I think you need to suppress your coughing because I think the judges may think that it's a nervous tick. I was like, no, I'm really ill. These behind the scenes stories that you never hear. And my mom was really, really ill to the point where she actually died the following summer. So there was a lot of overwhelmment happening at that time. I think I had a really big cry in my dressing area right before I hit the stage. It was just a way for me to release and to also kind of gear up my resolve before I hit the stage. So yeah, that time really was a time of self-reliance.
And putting through, coming through strongly. I'm sorry first to hear about your mother, that was coincidental in that time of your life, but to gather that inner strength to really come forward, I'm sure is something that many of you are facing nowadays because the world turned upside down in the classical music industry. So as we continue to learn more about what you think was very crucial or impactful in your life from NEC or Sphinx, I would also love to hear stories like that of how this is all helping you to cope with current times and current needs. Tony, would you like to take it over?
Sure. I think my time at NEC, most impactful part of it was probably the variety of professors in the school from whom I was able to learn, by either having them as chamber coaches or just sitting in on friends' lessons or something. And the concerts that I was able to see in Jordan Hall or down the street at Symphony Hall of the world-class artists that would sometimes pass through the little city of Boston. And in the environment at NEC, with the friends I had, the kind of enthusiasm for the music, and that everyone was there because, or almost everyone was there because they knew that they wanted to dedicate their life and their time and their energy and their passion to their art form. And so going to those concerts with friends and discussing them afterwards till the wee hours of the morning, or reading quartets till long past the building closed through bribing the guards or something, was really, not only enjoyable, but just a wonderful
Tony,
way.
you can't throw the guards over. You can't pull the guards into this. They didn't do anything. Shh.
I think they're all gone by now. But yeah, maybe I should. Bribing. No, we stopped when the building closed, and then so that's NEC, I guess, for me. And Sphinx was the opportunity to have high-profile performances with great orchestras, and also long, grueling tours, repeating the same repertoire, learning how to make it fresh and new every next concert, every next city, and kind of learning the professional world of classical music. Well, that's my attempt to answer the question of what was a crucial or critical aspect of those two institutions for me.
And Christine, as a classmate of Tony, how was your experience? Meaning, same time.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to add to Tony's experience list he was a great soccer player as well. And one fun aspect, I only went to see him and a few others play, but they would play chamber music and then go play soccer after, which was like a really fun thing. Yeah.
I joined the real team for the first time since I was 13 here in Germany. We play in the 7th division, and it's loads of fun. I haven't broken an arm or finger yet, and we are playing because of COVID, but once the season resumes, I'll be back on the field.
Awesome. I had a very similar experience. There was just like a real openness and earnest excitement from all the students about just putting our lives at the mercy of music, I guess, and just enjoying it fully. I studied with Natasha Brofsky, who was teaching there up until a few years ago, and she was so excellent. And I also took great chamber music classes with both Weilersteins, Vivian and Don, and Paul Katz, Miriam Fried, such an inspired faculty, and just seeing everyone play. Everyone was so different. Everyone had such a unique personality. It was just every day taking in something new was a given. Like, you're going to learn something every day just by being exposed. My experience with Sphinx was, as Tony said, just, you hit the ground running. You're just playing concerts and being a professional, and you learn a lot of lessons through that. And I remember when I was young, I think all like young musicians are pretty judgmental because we haven't done anything ourselves to be really judged. So I was, I thought, I graduated and I thought, I'm totally ready. Like, I'm, playing notes and stuff, and I have my technique together, and this is going to be great. But there is, living the life of a musician, which is, sometimes you're not going to be 100% inspired for every concert. Like, life happens and you're a human as well as performer. And so you have to learn how to take care of yourself and learn how to be your best in those situations when you're needed to, because it's a professional obligation. And so bringing the professionalism and the work aspect into music. There's no other way to learn how to do that, to be a great artist when you need to, at the right times. There's no other way to do that than to just do it. And Sphinx has been really great in helping with those opportunities, giving me exposure to continue growing from their connections. And I've learned so much. I guess it's going to be, I won in 2013, so in a couple of years it'll be 10 years. But yeah, I've learned I'm a much better, stronger artist from having those, lots of those performances. I know myself. I know what a little bit better what I represent in my playing and what my strengths are, and I really thanks for helping me get that platform early on, because I don't know if I would have had the opportunities somehow, but I didn't grow up in a family of musicians. I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, and we didn't know much about like how to create a career in music. So I was really lucky that Sphinx was there to kind of guide me through things and help me get a fresh start. And then to have been at NEC, which was so supportive, and it really helped me gain the confidence to embark on it. So it was just a very happy timing that I was at the right place before I embarked upon my professional life. So yeah.
Christine, I'm learning that you're a fellow Texan.
Oh, no way. Where are you from?
Houston.
Very cool. San Antonio. I hope your family, if you still have family there, they're doing okay with the snow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, with the grid and everything. Yeah.
Crazy. But nice fellow Texans. Yay.
And Gabriel, you're the one who's living it all right now. All these past experiences, you have them right now, and it'll be so great to hear your perspective.
Sure. Yeah. Well, as the other three have already kind of mentioned, for me, NEC has really been about the community. And of course, there are wonderful faculty members, wonderful teachers that we can all learn so much from. But for me, perhaps just as important has been the colleagues, the wonderful colleagues that we get to play with and ask each other for advice and everything like that. You know, before I came here, I experienced so many times when I was at different summer festivals or things, and I would meet great musicians there, and I would always ask, where are you studying that, and where are you during the year? And so often it was NEC, more often than any other school, probably, I would say. So I thought, well, something must be going on in this place. I better check it out. So I got to know some the professors here and ended up applying and came here. And I'm so grateful that I made that choice. Even in these COVID times, I'm fortunate to share this house actually with 3 other phenomenal musicians. We all study at NEC, and we have so many late nights just reading chamber music and playing for each other. We have like a weekly house studio class where we just play and get advice from each other. It's so phenomenal. That's, for me, that's just as valuable of a learning experience as any teacher can give you, really. So yeah, that's what NEC has kind of been about for me. For Sphinx, I went to the Sphinx competition several times. Actually, I went first in 2017 and won the 3rd prize. And then in 2018, I went back and won the 2nd prize. 2019, I was planning to go, but I got injured at the last second, had to cancel it, unfortunately. But thankfully, 2020, I was able to go back and won the 1st prize. So it's kind of this trajectory, which was kind of a journey for me to go and experience that and to constantly improve and see that progress happen. So in my specific case, after winning Sphinx, we all get several of these really great engagements, constant engagements around the country. And for me, I had many of them in my schedule for this season, and of course they were all canceled, which is a little bit unfortunate, but that's the world that we are living in these days. And still, they have given me so many great connections that I hope to cherish throughout the rest of my career. And even, just the opportunity from the money prize alone has allowed me to buy this beautiful instrument here now that I'm so grateful to have, and really changes everything in your life as a cellist to have an instrument that you really feel good with and love to play. So yeah, that has been really life-changing for me.
Nice. I would like to dig in just a little deeper on something that you all mentioned, especially Christine and Tony, in regards of the exposure that you got and the experience playing several concerts in a row. And as we reflect as musicians of color and the challenges that we face, what role has advocacy played in your life, and how does that intersect with resilience? I know you were exposed to a lot of opportunities to perform, and you even mentioned that you were lucky to have it. So I'm just curious on how much advocacy versus resilience played in your career.
Sure. I think gradually performing for lots of different kinds of audiences, Sphinx made an effort, especially in the Sphinx Virtuosi Chamber Orchestra tours that we would go on. They made an effort to really make sure they were accessing all different kinds of audiences. So we would have like main concerts, and then we would visit schools, and these schools would have people that wouldn't have necessarily have known to thought about going to a traditional subscription orchestra concert. So we were able to meet a lot of different people. I think it brought awareness of what access means and what access, and I think especially in classical music, where most of our audiences look a certain way and have a certain economic standing, and that's because they grew up maybe listening to classical music, and it's all feeds on each other, and it's kind of a cyclic. I think you start learning once you see who hasn't had access before but equally enjoys this kind of music. Classical music is kind of a microcosm and kind of a metaphor, or maybe a representation of much larger issues in the country right now, economically speaking and socially speaking. So in that way, I think it's made me more aware and more questioning of my craft and how that can help other issues in the long run, and how I can make me wonder how I can serve as potentially a mentor, or even, as soon as I won the Sphinx competition, people knew me as a Colombian American cellist, which people didn't necessarily know me for that before. And so thinking about that, like, what does that even mean? Like, why do I even need to say that? And I think the sheer fact that there are not many of us, the fact that there's like a stereotype of Colombian people that is really can be really negative. Just my existing as a Colombian American cellist is kind of enough, and just to be doing something maybe off the beaten track. And actually, there are a lot more really interesting Colombian musicians on the scene now. I think one of the recent Sphinx Medal of Excellence winners, and a conductor I've worked with a lot, Lina Gonzalez Granados, she's also Colombian. And so just serving as a role model and feeling the importance of that from having performed with a lot of different audiences, understanding how important representation is. I don't know if I can't say that I've been like a consistent, outward advocate, but I believe that my representation is advocacy in a way, if that makes sense. And I think all four of us probably are representing something, and Sphinx is representing something larger than that. I think that's how I'd answer that. Everyone else probably has better responses.
I think for me, the first instances of having a very concentrated group of excellent musicians who happen to be people of color were the Gateways Music Festival and Sphinx Organization competition. And I believe since then, that has just been a through line in my professional career. And that has led me to be a part of the Young Eight. It was I think the first, and probably ever since, professional string octet that was originally made up of young Black musicians here in the US that eventually became a multi-ethnic, multicultural group. As I said before, I've been a part of the Ritz Chamber Players since its inception in 2001, 2002. I used to be a part of a group called Core Ensemble, where we would perform chamber music theater works that showcased the actual lives of people of color, such as those as Frida Kahlo, and also the Black composers as well, such as Coleridge Taylor Perkinson. And now with my group Decomposed, that's also the same through line. And we're also, along with advocating for Black artists and Black composers, we also like to advocate for expanding the idea of what a composer is and what a composer does. I think in the classical music world, we can be very boxed in as to what that means. And expanding our idea of, who can be a composer, and what kind of music can be, enjoyed with that title, attached to it. So, yeah, I think advocacy has been a through line. And like Christine, it hasn't, I haven't felt like I needed to pummel someone over the head with it. It's just been a part of my my own musical education. And I've been very fortunate to share that with many audiences. And I love doing it in untraditional spaces and for audiences that don't have the access, as Christine had also stated. Yeah, it's just always kind of been there since those early days of, the late 90s of Gateways Music Festival and the Sphinx Competition. Yeah.
I started playing the cello through a program in Boston called Project STEP, which is a string training and education program for Black and Latino string students in the Boston area. And so for most of my formative, or the first, I don't know, I started with them when I was 6 years old and was with the program through high school until I started university. And so I would have lessons and theory classes and chamber groups all through the program. The program provided instruments and all the instruction necessary. Their goal is to provide everything necessary for a young musician to start the path towards becoming a professional musician. And so they kind of aim to remove any sort of financial barrier that could exist for people that are interested in the music and want to spend the time to try to reach a professional level. And so I started with them, and then I also started going to the Lange School of Music. It was a private conservatory at the time, and there were a lot of students there from other parts of the city and from different backgrounds than the ones with whom I had started learning the cello and I was interacting with in my theory classes or lessons. So I kind of entered the classical music world the opposite way, or through opposite demographics than what is normal, at least in the United States, where all the string players I knew from the age of maybe 5 to 7 or 8 were Black or Latino. And it wasn't until I started at the Lange School of Music that I saw people that looked very different to me playing. So in a way, I think I kind of am the result of the struggle that many people went through and the efforts of many people to create an environment where anyone can or could feel comfortable playing classical music, and it wasn't seen as being outside of a certain demographic or what someone was supposed to do. As I got older, I started to see that there were fewer minorities involved in it, up to the point where I am now, where there's very few. And in a way, I think this kind of upbringing in classical music has shaped me in that it's placed an incredible priority on just the sound and just the music, as opposed to any outside characteristics of a performance, including the visual or who's playing. So for better or for worse, I think the way I dealt with seeing my world of classical music change as I got more and more advanced and left the community in which I started playing music and entered the more global classical music community, is that I started to see that if there are differences in the way that people look, then a lot of people tend to listen with their eyes, and a lot of people will only give the sort of attention that they think the performer deserves based on their biography. If they see an incredible biography, they think, oh, this person must be great. They pay attention and they notice lots of little details and say, oh, wow, that's amazing. Oh, that's great. And this, I think, is applicable in all the arts. So I think, in a way, I just attempted to make the actual sound for the people that listened attentively be as good as I could make it, and tried to ignore everything else. And I think also just the fact that programs like Sphinx or Project STEP or the Gateways Festival or any of these programs that strive to promote diversity, I think it's important just that they exist, because the greatest tragedy on this earth is when you have someone with the potential to achieve who knows what in who knows what field, and if they never actually are able to realize it due to any sort of circumstances, then I think that's terrible. So, there you go.
Would it be okay if I just say something really quick? I just related to Tony's testimony so much. I think nobody wants to have to be an advocate in the first place. There shouldn't be anything to advocate. I think an assumption is oh, well, you're a person of color, you should be excited to advocate for this. And it's no, why do I have to do it in the first place? I wanted to study my craft. And so all of us have very different experiences and journeys, very personal journeys with what all of this outside stuff, outside of music, really means to us, and how we want to let it come into our lives, what it means to speak about it. And there's no wrong way. And I just really appreciated Tony's kind of vulnerability and very clear discussion of our inner conflict with it, of having to be whatever other people maybe expect us to be or not to be, or we're not enough, or we're too much. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a difficult thing to talk about, because there are certainly many issues in the discussion of musicians of color and how we kind of find our place in this world. But at the same time, I've been so incredibly fortunate just in my upbringing and in the opportunities that have come my way. And so, I grew up in a very small town in the Midwest, where it was predominantly white, but my parents are both academics. And so I was in an incredibly vibrant community growing up, and just kind of really encouraged me to love the arts and love knowledge and love life, really. So from a very early age, I just consider myself incredibly fortunate for what has been given to me. And because of that, now I've kind of experienced this thing similar to what Christine mentioned, where when I won Sphinx, now all of a sudden I am a Brazilian American cellist, which of course I have always been, but before then nobody ever called me that. I was just a cellist. And now I really see it as a responsibility, actually. Even though I've been so fortunate, it comes to this subject that I very much agree with Tony's sentiments, where it's truly the greatest tragedy when somebody has all these things inside them and has this incredible potential, and for one reason or another, they aren't able to see it come to fruition. So in my case, I see myself as having these opportunities and having this chance for my voice kind of to be heard. And that is such a great responsibility, in my opinion. So to be a role model for younger people of color, or for any cellist who has a voice and wants to share their story. So yeah, that's kind of my stance on it. As I said, it's a little bit of a difficult subject for me to talk about, but
yeah, thanks. I want to grab on something that Christine was saying, that you just want to work on your craft. And we, of course, want to open the space and have representation, as Tahirah was mentioning, her work with Decomposed, and have music from Black composers out there. And the Sphinx Organization was created with the idea of addressing this underrepresentation. And I think the ideal outcome is for a time that we're no longer necessary, because everybody is represented. So I'm just curious to hear from all of you, what you envision as the future of classical music to be, and what should we be tuning into, considering that we see the culture shift?
I think, oh man, I shouldn't have clicked first. A little ambitious. No, I think...
Ambitious is great.
Yeah. I think that all of our experiences are so uniquely different, and it's not even necessarily about... I guess the way I'm thinking about is like how we relate in chamber music rehearsals or larger group rehearsals, and how we work together as colleagues. Artistry, it's, yes, like, maybe our experiences shape how we are as artists as well, but how we work together and inspire each other to be our best, and being open to how people from different backgrounds express themselves in communicating. I think there can be a lot of assumptions in those micro ways that we communicate that, oh, well, maybe people disregard really quickly, even as basic as because you disregard it because of the visual, or you disregard it because you think, oh, well, they didn't have this background of doing, ABC festival. They didn't study with this person. Like, they don't have the right credibility. And that stuff is about access, right? So really valuing being able to see past those things and to value what the person is trying to communicate, and being encouraged to try something different and to listen differently. Again, not necessarily just the sound, but like letting another idea inspire, like be a catalyst for making music in a more unique way. I think that's probably how I envision a more multicultural way of making music, and that would be more representative of like the diversity in America, I guess, if we're talking about like the American music scene.
I think 2020 really showed us through a different lens. I think through a cleaner lens, on an institutional level, the state of the music industry and the state of classical music, and the gaps culturally, and just how we invite people to participate, and people to enjoy, and people to feel welcomed. I think with everything going on, for the social justice and the racial inequality to run parallel to a pandemic just made things very myopic, as far as just kind of seeing things and understanding things straight on. And I think a lot of institutions kind of got on the bandwagon to make a change. And that is a positive thing, absolutely a positive thing. And we as musicians of color are being called on to give guidance, being called on to give leadership, being called on to give insight. And I just want to say that, yes, there is a big responsibility there. And it's not like we haven't been doing it for years and years and years. I think just like the lens kind of shifted. I think, first of all, I want to say to my fellow musicians of color, to safeguard your energy during this time. It can get to a point where we end up saying yes to many things that may have the right intentions initially, but we have to be very, very clear about the change that we want to make, and how our roles are created and nurtured during this time. And I want to say to the institutions that are kind of having their light bulbs reignited, to just have clarity of heart. I think making those equity changes can very easily become trends. We want to be very, very careful not to fall into that. We want to be very clear that this is a global shift that needs to happen as far as inclusiveness and embracing everyone on the same platform in the same ways, or not necessarily in the same ways, but just in equal ways. And that takes compassion, that takes patience, and that just takes just having the right intentions behind the work that you do, the work that you want to see, and how you share that work. So I know that I'm speaking in very broad terms, but I think it's going to kind of have that essence of broadness until we kind of start to do this with our lens. But yeah, it's kind of where we need to start.
Very well said, Tahirah. Thank you for that. Just yesterday reminds me of a conversation we were having yesterday. Someone said how often you find in our musical institutions what appear to me is very strange comparison, but some competition between excellence and diversity. And of course, also as a musician and as an administrator of color, I was like, it should be to the core. And but there was a very wise answer to it. It's like we as institutions and also as individuals need to start simply redefining what we consider excellence to be. Excellence to be in an institution like NEC is an inclusive environment, not only of classical music, but of jazz music, of all the aspects, all the genres that we are educating, but the cultural aspect, the geographic aspect, the demographic aspect, all this aspect, that is part of the definition of excellence. And I think that was somewhat of a gateway to a link that may help many of us explain to those in the world that see those as competing terms, diversity and excellence, a gateway to try to bridge and really bring this conversation forward in a way that first is not threatening outside those of us that feel comfortable having the difficult conversations, but it's also inviting them. It's also bringing bridging this gap that can help us bring the broad view into a narrow view and walk through it together in many ways. So it's tangential to what you were saying, Tahirah, but it just made me think of that, how we can redefine how we speak about excellence, how we speak about the education that we provide, how we speak about the opportunities we provide in order to be the true inclusive environment that we want to be and be representative of the entire population, global population, not just regional or geographical population. But it made me think of that. So I needed to insert myself there.
No, that's great. I think if institutions will just start with giving space, giving space to those voices that have been othered in the past. Start there.
Gabriel, anything that you want to share in this topic?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think so many really insightful things have been said already. In my opinion, what we see going on in the business of classical music these days, when we are starting from 2020 and what follows, to see more musicians of color being, particularly composers of color, being programmed more frequently, and to see more of a priority and importance and a value in this in programming, which is all wonderful. It's absolutely the direction that things need to be going in, but there is a little danger, and I have seen in many different presenters and series where it's kind of done in a very half-hearted way, where it's like, well, we will do our own thing of what we've always done of great music making, and then we will throw in like the little 3 minutes piece by a composer of color, just so that it's there, so that we don't get in trouble, and there's this kind of attitude about it. And, maybe that's inevitable when we are starting out right now in this time period. But I really hope that and what I strive for is for there to become more of a cohesive vision of musical excellence and inclusivity, and for these things to work together and towards one goal, as opposed to this one kind of category that has to be fulfilled. And I think that it's certainly a very rewarding thing when that happens and when that works. And it might take a little bit of time for everything to get there.
And we have to start somewhere. And luckily we've had the Sphinx Organization for many years doing a lot of the dirty work, if you will, like really opening the ground and setting the pillars and setting an example for everyone to learn that all these models are very successful, and that truly inclusive models can happen and be of excellence and be of access and be of everything. So that we use this opportunity to collaborate with Sphinx and all of you in this great quartet project for us, NEC, to also learn in our efforts to become more inclusive, and an effort to offer more cultural equity and a sense of belonging to each and every musician that comes our way, and to provide access. So this is an opportunity for us to learn from you, and especially from Sphinx. And I'm hoping that as Anna and I just met through this collaboration, this is the beginning of many things to come. But I wanted to wrap up from our side to say thank you for your insight. Thank you for being part of this collaboration that Professor Lesser started. I think you're all going to be very satisfied with the results, despite having been put together in a studio. All of you are terrific musicians. We are very proud of you as our alum and a future alum, Gabriel. And Anna, I wanted to pass it on to you for you to give our closing remarks of the evening.
It's been an honor to co-facilitate this conversation with Claudia, and I hope this can inspire many young musicians that are now looking at all of you as role models. And I give special thanks to Professor Lesser for envisioning this collaboration between Sphinx and the NEC. And I just can't wait to hear the recording that you are all preparing now. So I really thank all four of you for giving us your time and your wisdom and your stories.
Thank you so much. Thank you to my colleagues.
Wonderful job.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Enjoy. Have a great week, everyone.